About a decade ago, I was working at the time on the Ted Budd for Congress campaign before he was in the US Senate, and got a call that my 20-year-old brother had passed away from a fentanyl poisoning. And I've described it like this to people before. It's like losing a limb. This is not natural, but you have to go through the rest of your life without it. I decided that I want his legacy to continue to live on through me and through the service that I provide.
12 years ago, no one was talking about fentanyl. Had you even heard of fentanyl at that point?
I can't say that I knew a lot about fentanyl specifically. This 18 or 19-year-old died of a drug overdose that I went to high school with. That's bizarre. And you start hearing about it more and more as the Biden administration just let all of these criminals and drugs into our country, and they weren't doing anything about it. No one was talking about it, right? But, President Trump started to, and thank God that he did.
Well, I am so privileged to be sitting here with Congressman Addison McDowell of North Carolina. Congressman, thanks for taking the time to come into the studio today.
You got it. Happy to be here.
Well, I was interested in, and for those listening who might not know, every member of Congress, you guys have a website, and then you have an About tab.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you can list your background, accomplishments, things you've done, or really want the public to know about. And I was interested that the very first thing that you mention on your About page is your brother, and that your brother is a huge part of why you are here in Washington, D.C. So I think it's only appropriate that we start there. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your brother's story?
So about a decade ago, I was working at the time on the Ted Budd for Congress campaign before he was in the U.S. Senate, and got a call that my 20-year-old brother had passed away from a fentanyl poisoning. And obviously very shocking news to find out he's 20. And so I found that out on the campaign trail. And I've described it like this to people before. It's like losing a limb. This is not natural, but you have to go through the rest of your life without it. And so, it really a tragic thing that happened. I think I'm a glass half full guy. And so I love the fact that he's the funniest person I've ever met. And so you can't think about him without laughing, because all the memories are very funny. But also the amount of people that his life touched. I mean, at his funeral and visitation, there was a line that it took 6 hours for us to meet everybody. So his story is a lasting impact. But, I decided that I want his legacy to continue to live on through me and through the service that I provide. And as the Biden administration just let all of these criminals and drugs into our country, and they weren't doing anything about it, I wanted to do something about it. And I met with President Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. And when she asked me the question that everyone that runs for office has to answer, why do you want to run? And I told her the story about my little brother. And I said, Susie, if one mother or father doesn't have to have a police officer come to their door and tell them, sir or ma'am, your son or daughter is dead, this will all be worth it. Just one. Obviously, we hope it's thousands, right? But that's why we're doing this, because I am certainly not an outlier anymore. There are countless families that have been victimized in the same way by lackluster policies at our border and a lack of leadership, really. But my little brother's name was Luke. And so Luke is the reason that I'm sitting here today, not at home enjoying a life without having to come to Washington every 4 days. But it's well worth it to fight for families like mine.
Well, and the thing, 12 years ago, no one was talking about fentanyl. Had you even heard of fentanyl at that point?
Sort of. I would not really, because I had heard that this 18 or 19-year-old died of a drug overdose that I went to high school with. That's bizarre. And you start hearing about it more and more. But you can't really, I can't say that I knew a lot about fentanyl specifically, because no one was talking about it. Right. But, President Trump started to, and thank God that he did.
Yeah, no, thank God they did is right. Because when you look at the numbers, so NIH, as you're well aware, they track the number of deaths, drug overdose deaths, and in that category of synthetic opioids, which is predominantly fentanyl, in the last decade, 500,000 deaths. The Ohio State football stadium, that holds about 100,000. So you think that stadium filled 5 times, every person sitting in that seat 5 times over passing away. I mean, it's sobering. The numbers are just insane. So to that end, I think it might be helpful just sort of to understand a little bit more about how do we get here to have that kind of spike? Because it was about a decade ago that people started becoming a little bit more aware. And then it really wasn't until about 5 years ago. It was like, this is out of control. But you've just introduced a bill called the PASS Act that we're going to talk a little bit about here in a second, that's really aimed at stopping this crisis and helping to plug a really important gap that has needed to be plugged, specifically addressing fentanyl pills. But maybe just help us understand, what are fentanyl pills? How do they get into the hands of Americans, especially America's youth?
Well, I mean, it's kind of two things I'll touch on real quick. One, it's our porous border, and that's the South, the North, the East, and the West. I mean, it's not, our adversaries don't just use the southern border, and we're naive to think that that's the case. I mean, they're smart about this. But if you're one of our adversaries, you have the option. You can either launch a nuclear weapon that would kill 500,000 people, and then you have a war that we're obviously going to get into because you nuked us. Or you can do this, and it accomplished the exact same goal. You killed 500,000 military-age men and women at a slow drip. That's exactly what they've done. And so for the president to identify these cartels as terrorist organizations is exactly right. But this bill, the PRESS Act, it goes after these pill presses, because fentanyl, when it comes, and this is exactly what happened to my little brother. He took a pill that he thought was something else, which I'm not saying is right or wrong. He shouldn't have done that. But he took a pill that he thought was something else. It was pure fentanyl. And when when a physician gives fentanyl, it is very, very calculated how much they give you. They're very careful because it is such a lethal poison. And so you're tasking drug dealers with becoming chemists. They're obviously not. And so that's the problem. But you start on one end, this comes from the Mexican drug cartels. It also comes through our ports from China directly. And so there's multiple ways that it happens. Now, we shut off the pipeline at the southern border, right? That's perfect. We have the Coast Guard and our law enforcement agencies that are patrolling our coastline, and they are doing a phenomenal job. I mean, they're doing the Lord's work, getting these boats that have drugs on them. They're telling them, if you continue to try to come into the United States, your resting place for the end of time will be at the bottom of the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, which is where they belong. But what we found, and this is a bill that I've been working on for about a year, working with the DEA to figure out, what do we do, and how can we actually make a difference on this topic? And so what they were telling me is that China will ship pill presses, because they're taking uncut pure fentanyl and they're pressing it down into a type of, like, something that looks like a pill.
Okay, so taking the powder and pressing it so hard that it forms a pill.
And so they're shipping pill presses to the United States, and they do this in a number of different ways, but the most sinister way that they do it is, imagine a giant shipping container that has lots of different parts. That shipping container may have spread throughout the 50 different parts of a pill press. Now, you're never going to put together that this would make a pill press. It'd be impossible to do that, but that's what they're doing, and it's coordinated. So if you're a drug dealer, the China's sending you the pill press, and the drug dealers are bringing the drugs through the border, right? That's kind of what was the strategy they were using. And so this would kind of close a loophole that deals with bringing pill presses into the United States. It would provide additional penalties for being convicted of doing that. But I think the main thing is, this bill would not do anything if it weren't for President Trump's stance at the southern border, because these drug dealers, they're putting fentanyl in everything. And so if there are any young people that are watching this, do not use recreational drugs, because the cartel is putting that stuff in everything. The DEA they put it in lollipops and then ship it.
Insane.
I mean, it's
evil.
Yes. So this is like the least we can do, is to try to be a solution to some of what is going on. But fentanyl, it started out, people would put it in heroin. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a supplement to heroin. Now it's drug dealers are putting it in weed and marijuana to give you like a stronger high. And so now you have, they're not chemists, like they don't know exactly. Yeah. It's just a bad situation. And the number of fentanyl deaths went off a cliff. And I am just over the moon about that because, President Trump, he signed the Halt Fentanyl Act, mm-hmm. and they invited me to be at the bill signing for that, which really meant a lot to me. But what behind us, there were dozens of families holding pictures of loved ones. And that, it's a reminder that that's why we're doing this. And that's why this is so important. Because again, it's not just my family. It's too many.
Yeah, way too many.
Yeah.
Is your story, is Luke's story, is it one that you hear pretty often from your constituents in North Carolina?
Oh, yes. I can't go anywhere without someone coming up to me and saying, this happened to me, or this happened to my son or daughter's best friend. This happened to my nephew or niece. Everyone at this point is 1 degree of separation away from someone. They know someone that's been affected by this. And so, I hear that constantly from people, but the benefit of representing a district where I grew up, so many people knew my brother. So that 1 degree is very personal to me, because it's his friends. It's my friends that knew him. And so, but it's, there's, I think at this point, there's 7 or 8 people that I went to high school with that have died from it. And there were, 1,200 people at my high school. Wow. So, that's
high percentage considering. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's no respect for political parties on this issue. It affects everyone. Mm-hmm. Have you found working on Capitol Hill that there is unity of Republicans and Democrats locking arms and saying, hey, let's get to work on this issue. Let's address this, whether or not they necessarily love the president?
Yes and no. There's definitely been a willingness to work, along party lines. I have found a couple of times that my colleagues across the aisle wanted to use my story to help themselves. Which when I found that out, obviously I was like, we're not working together. You're not going to use me or my family to just help yourself, because I'm actually trying to make a difference here. But there are certainly folks that want to work together. Now, the first time that I spoke on the floor of the House was about my brother, and it was the day before his birthday, which his birthday is February 7th. So this was, I think, February 6th. 2025. And we're speaking about a bill, the Halt Fentanyl Act. And the Democrat that spoke after me, her argument for why we should not classify fentanyl as a drug that comes with a stronger prison sentence is because our jails are overcrowded or something to do with the prisons. And I'm thinking to myself afterwards, I would much rather my brother be in jail than dead. And so we're not on the same planet if you can't accept that we're trying to save people's lives. But from a party that's incredibly pro-choice, it's not really that hard to imagine. Sure. But it's very disappointing because this should be a bipartisan issue. Because fentanyl doesn't care if you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't care what age you are. We should all be able to work on this together, but they just don't want to give a victory to the president, which is a real shame, because we could be saving the lives of young people, but instead we're playing politics.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, the president has taken a lot of action, not only with that Halt Fentanyl Act, but then, of course, we've seen in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, just really doing something that no one's ever done before.
For sure.
All right, we're going to hit them right where they are. In regards, to those strikes, to what we're seeing out of Venezuela, what do you think the president, what additional actions would you like to see? How do we kind of navigate dealing with South American countries that have shown either they're incapable of really addressing the problem that is within their own land, or they're not willing to?
Well, I think, the first time I met the president, he made a promise to me. It was like 4 days after my brother died was when I met him for the first time. And at the time, he was the only candidate that was really talking about the border. I mean, it had started to become an issue, but he was the only one that really took it seriously.
Wow.
And so I met him, I believe it was the week before he became the president-elect. And when I met him, I said to him, "Sir, you're the only person," because he was asking about my brother. And I said, "You're the only candidate that took this issue seriously. Please, when you win, deal with it." And he promised me in 2016 that he would, and he has. You look day one, before he even left the Capitol. I mean, he was just signing executive orders on the way out the door. And that's the kind of leadership that people wanted. Now, the downside of it is that everyone thinks that we've solved the border crisis.
Yeah.
We haven't. There's still work to be done. I mean, he did the very obvious things that Joe Biden could have done that he didn't. But, closing the border, that's the obvious first step. But what we've seen them doing now is they're using intelligence that we have to stop this stuff from coming. They are using tariffs to tell China, knock it off, stop sending this stuff to our country. And it's working. But I trust the president's team to know exactly what to do from the executive branch to deal with this, because you've got a group of people that are incredibly committed to doing that. Now, on the legislative side, as far as I know, I'm the only member of Congress that has lost a sibling to this issue. And so, of course, I wanted to lead on some of these things. And the Republican leadership has been very gracious to ask me for my input on some of these things. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we've got to keep looking for different things that we can do and get creative and think outside the box, which is why a year ago I went to the DA and said, "What do you need? Like, what are we not doing that we could do?" And so that's the approach that we're taking. But I think what the president is doing in these countries that are facilitating, if not outright doing, the sending of drugs into our country. And it's not just drugs. I mean, it's human trafficking. It is weapons. I mean, it's covers the whole thing. And the president is addressing all of it. But I'm grateful that they've looked at these countries in South America that are actively their governments are actively participating in drug trafficking and human trafficking into the United States. And they're actually doing something about it, which is refreshing. And so, I told the president, I'll have your back 100% on the border on this issue. I will never waver because it's too important. It's life or death. It really is.
Yeah. Congressman, before we let you go, just want to give you the opportunity to speak to those family members who have lost a child, a sibling, even a parent maybe to a fentanyl overdose. What is your message to them?
In my office, I did this on purpose. There's a picture of my little brother that we had an artist paint of him after he died. And I have a copy of that in my office on the door. I have to walk by every time I go to vote. And so it's a reminder to me, this is why I'm here. When we're in a 27-hour vote series and we've been up all night, and you wonder, like, what am I doing here? Like, when you feel like the gridlock says you can't get anything done, what am I doing here? When, someone does something that is a problem and you have those thoughts of like, why am I here? That's why I'm here. And I have to see that every time I go vote. When I sit at my desk, he's looking right back at me. And it's not just him. That picture represents him. Of course, it's a photo of him. But to me, it represents every single family that comes into my office, that goes into the other 434 offices in Congress, and they have this same issue on their heart or on their mind because they've been affected by it. That's a picture of Luke, but it's also a picture of your family member. Because if there wasn't a purpose to me being here, there's no way that I would leave my wife and kids at home every week to come to Washington. Unless it was for something that could actually make a difference. And so when my daughters are very young, and I hope and pray that when I leave this place, because I don't want to make it a career, but I hope when I leave this place, they can look at me and say, "Daddy, we understand why you had to go to Washington and why you had to do this," because they never met Uncle Luke. Uncle Luke's legacy is all they're going to know. And I hope that we will be able to make a difference on this. And when we do, I'll be able to look my kids and my wife in the eyes and say, the reason that I had to leave you for 4 days a week was to save people like Luke, and this will all be worth it.
Yeah. It's a very good place to leave it today. Congressman, thank you for your time.
You got it.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks.